In this Fextralife video, I'm going to be talking about my hands-on impressions with Vampire The Masquerade Bloodlines 2. This is a game that we did a preview for earlier this year on the channel, and I think most people were either pessimistic about this game, considering the direction of it, or maybe cautiously optimistic about it at best. But not a ton of people were really excited for this game, myself included. It's not one that I was super looking forward to, and in fact, I didn't really have plans to see it at Gamescom, but a friend of mine actually said she went and played it, and it was one of her favorite games of the show, which kind of caught me off guard. So I went over to the Paradox booth and decided to check it out, and I was really, really pleasantly surprised with what I saw so far. So let's get into it. So this game is being developed by the Chinese Room and Paradox Interactive. The Chinese Room is most notably popular for Still Wakes the Deep, if you've ever heard of that game, and I know there is a bit of controversy around this game. Apparently there were 2 vampire clans that are supposedly locked behind DLC for this game. This is not something I was aware of when I saw the game, and obviously that's not something I'm thrilled about hearing about, but I did see that the Chinese Room responded that they're looking into this and potentially changing this before launch, so the outcry about that seems to have caused change there. We'll see if that gets sorted out. But this video isn't really about that. This video is simply about how does the game play and what is it like. So in Vampire The Masquerade Bloodlines 2, you're playing as an elder vampire. This is drastically different than the first game where you played as a fledgling vampire, so you're much more strong, you're powerful, you have abilities already. And this is something that I learned almost instantly when playing the game. The first enemy I attacked, I punched him, he flew 30 feet into a wall and died instantly. And it completely caught me off guard. I felt strong and powerful from the very second I started playing the game, which was awesome. Now, not every enemy dies this way, of course, and not every enemy is that easy, but at least from what I played so far in Bloodlines 2, the first 45 minutes or so of the game, it very much feels like a vampire power fantasy. That is to say, you can do some really, really OP things out the gate, and I expect this to just get more and more so as you play through the game. Like, you can almost fly from rooftop to rooftop, you can climb up the side of buildings, and you generally just kick butt in combat. And Bloodlines 2 so far is one of those games that just makes you feel like a badass while you're playing, even from the very moment, and you don't want to stop because it just feels so damn good. And I will say that Bloodlines 2 has a bit of a noir feel to it for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's set in the city of Seattle, and the music that plays while you're making your way through the game and while fighting has a little bit of a rock noir feel to it. It's really hard to explain unless you've heard it, but it really sets the mood of the game. There's kind of a underlying detective feel there as you play, and as you play, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it really immersed me into the game world. It really made me want to explore and investigate because of this. So kudos to the music and kind of the environment and setting. It really pulled me in instantly. And the other reason is that you're actually carrying another consciousness with you as you play through the game, and you're not quite sure why. Part of the reason for that is, explained in the story, and I don't want to ruin that for anyone, but it turns out that you have basically another vampire in your head, and this guy is a private investigator from the 1920s. And your conversations that you'll have with him, you'll talk to him about things that have happened and kind of go back and forth with him, and you can build a reputation with him and things like that. But what I've been told is that eventually, as you progress through the game, when you're resting as your character, this private investigator vampire consciousness that's in your head will take over, and you'll actually get to see the city during the 1920s time period and play through a completely different setting of Seattle. So this sounds really, really interesting, and obviously the 1920s is a big part of that noir feeling of the game. Another thing that I really thoroughly enjoyed while playing was the dialogue of the game. The voice acting is pretty solid from what I've seen so far, and the options for dialogue allow you to play really aggressively or passively, and you can see the reactions of your comments in real time, not only in the facial expressions of people on the screen, but also in text form. It kind of shows you this person will remember this, or this person viewed this positively, or this person was upset by it. I keep saying Pearson, but you get the point. There's a lot of nuance to it, and you can sort of see the reaction, so you can understand how things have went for you. And I think that's probably going to be good for replayability in the long term of the game, simply because you can see that this was positive or negative, and it's not always the expected result that you'd have. For instance, I had an interaction with one character where I was talking very, very aggressively to them, trying to intimidate them, and that person respected me for it because this was a brute force type character, kind of a bully guy, and the only thing that he really responded to was strength, so projecting strength was respected by him, and it actually turned out not getting into a fight with him, which I was almost certainly expecting from the way I was talking. And on top of that, there are 6 different bloodlines that you can choose from, each with their own skills and skill trees that impact the way that you play through the game, from dialogue to combat to traversal in the game world. And they have different skills and abilities, and it's not easy to pick which bloodline that you want. It's a very tough decision, and I think that's great because it really does impact the way that you're going to play through the game. In my case, I played the Banu Hakim, which are kind of like the judgment/execution bloodline, where they kind of assassinate people they deem to have done wrong and things like that. And one of the early abilities that I got was actually the ability to decapitate a weaker enemy instantly and just literally use your hand to slice their head off, which was kind of fucking awesome, frankly. And there are other abilities that you'll gain. And something particularly interesting was that, like, when you go through the bloodline selection of the game, it kind of tells you like how your experience is going to be. Like, it doesn't spoil it for you or anything like that, but it's telling you like, this is an easier bloodline to play. This is a harder one to master. And so not all bloodlines in the game are created equal from, difficulty of the game. You can play some of the other bloodlines, but you just have to recognize that it might be harder to get through certain points of the game because you have a different skill set that may not be applicable. For instance, if you pick a bloodline that's not notable for combat, you might have more difficulty in combat scenarios than you would maybe some of the other vampire bloodlines that excel at combat. And the exploration of the game, I didn't get to see a huge part of it because I was basically doing like the first quest of the game that kind of acclimates you to the game world in Seattle and things like that. And you're kind of following like a blood scent to an objective, and you're meeting up with somebody. And, basically the first thing you're trying to do is establish yourself in Seattle and not get killed by the local vampires there. And you've been asleep for a very long time, and so you're not really familiar with the way the city operates, and you're trying to kind of like navigate that while you learn the mechanics of the game. So there's a lot of that at the beginning, but it feels really good when you're traversing. You can run really fast, you can run up walls, you can fly, basically not completely, but you can glide, and basically anywhere you can see so far, it feels like you can go. So there's a lot you can do in exploration. You can just run up to random NPCs and kill them or attack them, and if you blow your cover as a vampire, then bad things will happen. So you can't just do all these things openly in front of humans, and there's a little bit of that going on in the game as well. And I really, really enjoyed what I've seen so far. I think that's going to be a stellar element of the game. And the only real concern I have with the game so far is maybe the game's combat system, which seemed, at least for me, I was playing on one of the harder difficulties of the game. I don't think it was the hardest one, but it was like the second hardest one. There was like easy, normal, hard, and then like very freaking hard or whatever. And I was playing on the hard just to see how it was. And combat is really fun, I will say. But it felt like even basic enemies were taking 4 or 5 hits compared to like the very beginning of the game, where it was like things were dying really quick. It seemed like very quickly the enemies became more damage spongy, if you will. You can still assassinate enemies in one hit, so if you take like a stealthy approach, sometimes that doesn't really matter. But it did feel like on the harder difficulty, there was a bit of damage sponginess. And again, it was very early in the game. I had like one ability. You're going to get much more later on in the game that'll probably make combat go a lot faster. And I would imagine that, again, this is part of the bloodline selection, that there are certain bloodlines that just have more combat abilities that are going to make combat go faster. And, I was kind of in the middle area of those. So I imagine this may be different if you select a different bloodline. But I am a little bit worried that combat may get repetitive, at least on the harder difficulties, from how spongy those enemies were. And it's not something that I'm like super worried about because everything else was so good at the moment, but we'll just have to wait and see. And something I want to mention briefly before I wrap up this video too is that I know that this sequel is a huge departure from the original in terms of the way the game is designed, and there's going to be a certain amount of people out there that just don't like it because of that. And that's totally understandable, absolutely. I never really played Vampire the Masquerade, at least not to the degree that a lot of the fans of the series have played. So for me, this is kind of like a fresh entry for me. So I'm just kind of giving you my impressions from someone who's never really played a lot of Vampire the Masquerade. I've never played the tabletop or anything like that, even though I love tabletop games. It's just not something I'm super familiar with. So take that with a grain of salt. If you're a Vampire the Masquerade fan, you may have issues with the game simply because it departs so much from the original. But if you've never played the original, or you're somebody who's just curious about the game from everything you've heard online, I will say that it plays really, really well so far, and I'm actually pretty excited about the game for what it is. All in all, though, I really, really enjoyed the game. It was definitely one of the best games I played at Gamescom. There are a couple other ones that we'll talk about in future videos. I have a lot more games to go through. I played a lot more games at Gamescom you're going to want to hear about. But this is definitely one of the standouts for me. It was really, really fun. And time just slipped by while I was playing. Before I knew it, almost an hour had gone by, and I wanted to keep playing. That is a really, really good sign. I can't say that I felt that way with a lot of games I played at Gamescom, even though some of them were really good. Like, I didn't feel that way about The Outer Worlds 2, even though it was a good game. I didn't feel like, oh, where did an hour go? Like, I was very aware of how much time had gone by. With Bloodlines, I just lost track of time, and it was really, really fun. So I can't wait to see more of this game, and I understand the concerns with this game, but if you're still on the fence about it, we will have a review of this game out in October. I would urge you to at least keep an open mind about it until we get to the review phase and see what people have to say about it. But so far, I like what I've seen. So what do you guys make of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2? It's a game out there that's kind of been in development hell for a really long time, and now with the DLC thing and being a departure from the original, what do you make of it? Are you one of those Vampire the Masquerade fans that's really disappointed in the direction of the game? Or are you one that's taking a look at it with an open mind? Or maybe you're just an RPG fan and you're wondering what you're going to get from this game? Let me know what you think in the comments below.